Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the latest iland Tech Talk series. Today we're going to be talking about iland Secure Cloud Backup with Veeam Cloud Connect. To get started, I just want to run through a quick agenda. Today we're going to be running through an introduction about myself and the company for the new folks on the line. Also going to be running through an overview and a demonstration of iland Secure Cloud Backup with Office 365 and Veeam Cloud Connect. And we will also be doing a Q&A as well. So any questions as we're running through, please do put those in the Q&A box and we'll get to those towards the end as well. So just by way of brief introduction, my name is Sam Woodcock. I am currently the Director of Solutions Architecture for iland in Europe. Been with the company around 6 years and really worked to design solutions from the cloud backup solution we're going to be talking about today through toward disaster recovery and cloud hosting. You'll see my Twitter details there. Please reach out, as well as my email as well if you have any queries post this tech talk. For the folks on the line who haven't heard of iland before, just to give you a brief introduction, we've been delivering IT services for the last 22 years, and actually 12 years we've been delivering cloud and disaster recovery specifically, and we're doing that across 8 global locations today. We're mainly known for disaster recovery as a service. You'll see 3 years running the leader in disaster recovery as a service according to Gartner, but today's topic tests are the fact that we also provide services such as backup and cloud hosting. And we do that through a range of partners, including Cisco, VMware, as well as Veeam as well. And we're very proud to be Veeam's Service Provider of the Year. We work a lot with channel partners as well, so we have a lot of partners bringing added value to our services. So if you've got a preferred channel partner, please work through those guys as well, but we offer this service globally through a direct model as well. So that's a little bit about the company and myself, but today we're going to be talking technically about the iland Secure Cloud Backup solution with Veeam Cloud Connect. So this is a cloud backup solution offered globally and powered both by the iland platform as well as Veeam software. And as you may already know through your use of Veeam, Veeam is the #1 provider of backup software around ecosystems such as VMware, Hyper-V, and across other hypervisors as well. So really happy to speak to you about this service and show you how this works technically today through a demonstration. So first of all, I think it's good to know why this solution exists. It's always good to have technology, but you need a use case for that technology. So based on industry best practices and also based on Veeam research, we feel, and Veeam feel also, that it's important to attest and stick to the 3-2-1 backup rule. So what is that 3-2-1 backup rule? Well, it's making sure that you have 3 copies of your data. It's extremely important to have multiple copies for resiliency and redundancy. You never know what would happen to one copy. Always good to have a number of copies. Also important to make sure that it's on different media type. Obviously, storing it all on one specific storage array or disk or whatever the case may be is not good practice. Obviously, things happen to hardware, so you need to make sure it's on different media type to sustain different levels of failure that may occur on specific media that you're storing your data on. And we feel it's extremely important to have a copy off-site. A lot can actually happen on your main production site, whether that's large-scale disasters such as fire and flood, theft, or human error, as well as things like insider attacks through malicious employees. A lot can happen on a on-site location, and it's important to make sure that data is off-site to survive both the macro and micro-scale disasters that may hit that location. So that's really the primary reason that this service exists, is to make sure that if you're leveraging Veeam on premises, you can get a copy of this data off-site, and we're the off-site copy of that data. We provide cloud repositories globally to store the data, and we make sure that that is accessible, encrypted, secure, and easy to utilize whenever you need it. So that's why the service exists. I want to give you a little bit of background about why this service is really compelling if you're a Veeam user or considering Veeam as a backup solution on your on-premises location. First of all, with any backup solution, getting it off-site, it's important to make sure that that data is secure. And that starts with end-to-end encryption. So Veeam did a great job when they brought this service to market to enable encryption via SSL as you transit the data to iland as a cloud provider. So when you actually go to set up the solution, Veeam ensures that when you connect to the cloud provider, in this case iland, it will form an automatic SSL tunnel with no VPN needed. So very easy to set up, but once it's there, make sure that the data is encrypted as it moves across the internet to the iland cloud. Also, as an optional extra through the Veeam software, you can enable encryption on a backup file or set of backup files. So before moving that data to iland, it ensures that the backups are encrypted with a key that you manage and maintain. So not only can nefarious or bad actors accessing the data not get to that data without the key, but iland as a service provider also would not have access to that data as well. So if this is critical to your business, depending on the data type that you have, really nice end-to-end encryption with the solution. We also wanted to make sure it was as cost-effective as possible for businesses to utilize. So it starts off with no setup or expansion fees for the service. We want to get you started as soon as possible with no overheads for setup. We do provide a dedicated team for the service, but we wanted to enable this for as many organizations as possible. It's also cost effective in the instance that there are no bandwidth costs for moving the data to iland or retrieving the data from iland. We know other service providers in the market on the higher end of the spectrum do charge for ingress and egress. We don't believe in that, and we feel that it's important to make this a very easy to consume service with no hidden costs. So it's very cost effective to consume. We wanted to make sure that you have management and visibility once you're using the service. So iland, a number of years ago, brought the iland Secure Cloud Console to the market, and that is our main interface for driving and controlling all of the cloud services that iland deliver. That same industry-leading console is available for our cloud backup customers. So on the go, you can have visibility over storage usage, backup success, the repository size, and making sure that it's a successful project. And also you can manage things like adding storage and maintaining the repositories on our side. But also if you consume any other iland services, this same console can be used to manage those without having to switch between different interfaces. So it's very easy to manage, and you have full visibility over both your source backups as well as your destination backups and repository. Very efficient to transit the data. It's accelerated, it's compressed, it's deduplication. Duplication is involved in here. So it means it's very efficient when it transits the data across to the iland cloud. Means it's effective on your WAN bandwidth links as well. So often an assessment we can make as part of my team's role within this design phase, but they built it to make sure that it will transit the data very efficiently across to the iland cloud. In terms of flexibility, it notes here that we also support VMware as well as Hyper-V platforms through the Veeam Cloud Connect service, but also not mentioned on this slide is also support for Nutanix Acropolis. So it supports 3 platforms for backup. Natively through those interfaces, you can send data locally, but also send it to the cloud and have a way to restore that back to your on-premises location. And really important for any service is making sure that it's global in nature. So iland has been in the cloud and disaster recovery space for the last 12 years. And as a result, we offer these services globally across backup, DR, and production hosting. So you can pick the location that makes sense to you and ensure that you have data sovereignty for your business as you leverage the service, which is critical for compliance and security. We want to make sure that when you choose a location for your backups to reside, that's where they stay. They don't move automatically to a region that you don't choose to have the data. Really important there. So a little bit about how it works. As I mentioned, it works with VMware, Hyper-V, and Nutanix Acropolis. You have your production storage and a Veeam backup and replication server on your on-premises location, and that would be responsible for driving and controlling local backups to your local storage devices. If you don't have Veeam already, a good product to try. There's free trials available for that product as well. Very simple to install. Once installed, it gives you a really good option for backing up virtual machines on your on-premises location. But as I mentioned, very easy to securely traffic the data to iland, very easy to connect to iland. And again, this is over an SSL connection via a single port. There's only one firewall port you may need to open. We'll run through that in the demonstration. Once you have that connection established, this is a one-time process. You connect through iland's cloud gateways, which are load-balanced virtual servers, through to our cloud repositories, which are securely dedicated to each customer, individually controlled. So we have role-based access. We have kind of no access through to other customer repositories. We have a reference architecture dictated through Veeam and iland that ensures that your customer data or your user data is only for yourself. You can't access other company data or other user data as well, which is extremely important. So very simple to connect through to the iland cloud. In terms of global locations, you can choose to utilize this service. We have 3 North American locations here. Los Angeles, we have Dallas, we have Washington, D.C. Across into the UK, we have Manchester and London. Into mainland Europe, we have Amsterdam. Into Asia, we have Singapore, and recently we also have Sydney and Melbourne as Australian locations. All of these locations, again, have the Veeam Cloud Connect or iland Cloud Backup service available to you to utilize. And they, again, have all of the other services that we offer on a standard reference architecture. So wherever you consume the service, the commercial model is the same, but also the technical side of things is also the same in terms of performance, best practice, and scalability as well. So often what we see is multinational companies potentially consuming repositories within each major geography. They can have a single repository or multiple repositories within a region, and that can all be managed through the iland console, both from a capacity perspective as well as a backup perspective as well. All of these facilities that we leverage are compliant and secure. We align to ISO frameworks as well as the Cloud Security Alliance STAR certification, where we are gold medal certification standard. These are compliant and secure data centers where we hold your data. And they're also connected to lots of different IP providers to make sure that you have the best possible connectivity through to the Cloud Connect repository. And again, a clear location for data sovereignty. You can choose the location that works best for your business and your data. But also really important when you actually look towards the cloud and a Veeam Cloud Connect service is looking and evaluating the cloud provider for local support and support that you can access at any point in time. So we have support locations across North America with our main Houston NOC. We also have a London NOC and also a Sydney NOC as well. So you can contact our support team either through our cloud console or actually directly on the phone and get through to Tier 2 technicians certified on VMware and Veeam technologies. They're available to help you along the way, consume the service, and support the service as well, which we feel is extremely important. Another important part is we don't charge for that support. It's just included natively with our offer. So we support the technical side, but also we want to make sure that you have the support you need from our team as you utilize iland as a service. So that's a little bit about iland myself, the technology and where you can consume that service. But this being a tech talk, we wanted to make sure that you have a demonstration of how the solution works. Very simple solution to utilize and maintain, but did want to give you some in-depth knowledge of what we've been running through in terms of slides, in terms of a demonstration here today. So what you can see here before I jump into the demo is the iland Secure Cloud Console. This is the console where you actually can manage those repositories, the storage space, the backup success. A lot of the day-to-day management will be through the familiar Veeam console that you guys utilize today if you're a Veeam user. So there's no change and no new skills to learn in terms of the backup solution and backup interface. You can continue to utilize the Veeam software that you use day-to-day. You simply plug in iland as a repository and start backing up to that location. Where this Cloud Console comes in, again, is for the monitoring and management of the repository itself, and this is where you can gain access to our support team to actually help along the way with that piece. But without further ado, I'm going to go through and actually go to my remote desktop where I have a Veeam server running. This is the Veeam server that you are utilizing on a day-to-day basis for your local backups. You may be running off-site backups to a second site that you have, or you may be doing this to a different storage device, for example, a tape array, for example. Where maybe iland comes in is potentially you're looking to deleverage that second site. Maybe you can make a cost saving, not having to maintain a second facility or second sets of capacity. This is where you can consume iland as a storage repository and send data instead as an option. So really good to consider that. Here you see your local backups. Very simple once you have that in place to start running cloud backups. Let me show you how you connect through that, and that's through the backup infrastructure section. Simply, we would go to the service provider section, and we can add a service provider like iland to your Veeam service. In this case, I have two iland repositories already set up. These are in Dallas in the United States, but I can show you how easy it is to configure a connection to our Cloud Connect service. Simply, if we go to the properties of this existing connection, all it involves to set up the repository and the connectivity to the repository is to enter the DNS name that's provided by the service provider. In this case, we will send you across the DNS name of your chosen backup repository. In this case, it's Dallas. So you simply enter that in, and then you also make sure that your firewall has port 6180 open to enable replication across of the data. That's all you need to do on that front. The only other step to this, to connect to the service provider, is to add the credentials that are provided by iland again. This will be simply a username and password, and there will be a certificate to verify that the service provider is authentic and verified by the third party as well. Simply with that, we click Apply. This establishes the connection to the service provider and verifies that you have access to the repository that you've signed up for from the iland representative that you're speaking to. In this case, I have 1,000 gigabytes. We have customers upwards of petabytes of storage within our environment today. But that's all you need to do, first of all, to connect to iland. You can see it's extremely simple, probably takes all of 30 seconds to do that. Once that's done, no other connections required. This is always maintained. There's no need to change this once it's set up. So very simple to connect as the first step. Second of all, we want to start some backups to the cloud. Now, there's two ways to do this. Number one is to send backup data straight to the cloud. So you can choose to run a backup job as you do today within your virtual environment. We'll call this test backup, for example. And we will choose the virtual machines as standard, as you're used to doing, from your cluster in your virtual center. So in this case, I'm going to pick a virtual machine to backup. In terms of storage, the only difference between a local backup and a cloud backup is the repository that you pick. And in this case, all I would do is select the iland cloud repository as a repository to send that data. Again, the same familiar settings that you would be used to in terms of restore points, scheduling, and processing. This is all selected through the backup job. So this is a very quick way to send data straight to the repository. But as we spoke about in the slides, I think we really do feel that the 3-2-1 strategy is the one that most businesses want to align to make sure that they have a local copy of the data for quick recovery, instant ability to get to that data, and then they have a second copy of that data offsite so that if something should happen to the main copy of the data, you always have a way through to get to the data itself. So what we would recommend and see widely adopted is the backup copy job. In this case, we can again select backup copy through the Veeam software. Again, select a name for the backup copy job and choose how frequently that this runs. So generally, we have this so that potentially as you create local backups, this job can run as a second entity after the main job has finished, and it will choose to send that data to the cloud once that local copy has been attained. So this is a very quick way to make sure that as your local backups complete, the cloud backups stay in synchronization and you have a copy of that data offsite. So they made it very simple to do that, and we can consume that either via backup jobs or through virtual machines themselves. You can choose what you choose to send across to the iland cloud repository. Again, I'm just going to do a virtual machine in this instance, but again, the target would be the repository in the cloud rather than a local copy. We then have the flexibility to utilize all of the same technologies that you picked Veeam for in terms of being able to choose the number of restore points to keep. Also, adopting strategies such as grandfather, father, son can all be done through the same service. All of the same backup technologies and methodologies are available with our Cloud Connect service. Again, you're just consuming it to a different repository. And that will be a standard theme throughout this demonstration. In terms of additional settings, a really nice way also to touch on some of the points that I made before, you can choose to optionally encrypt the backup file prior to sending that across to iland. And simply you need to add a password for the service to encrypt the data. This will be something that you need to maintain so that if you need to restore the data, you have the key to unencrypt the data. But you can optionally choose to do that prior to moving the data to iland. There's some nice functionality from Veeam around data sovereignty. You can make sure that you tag data to make sure that as you're setting up backup jobs, it's making you aware of that you're adhering to those specific compliance requirements. Traditionally, we also see that customers directly send the data across their internet circuits to iland. Iland has very high-speed internet circuits, again, that we don't charge our customers for leveraging. And this is the most common way that we see customers moving data to iland's cloud. We do have optional ability, if you should need to leverage WAN acceleration through the Veeam software as well. That's an optional feature that you can leverage. And then again, you can choose to run this as a continuous job, so it's always looking out for the latest local backup and sending the data to the cloud, or you can choose to run it during certain periods of the time of the day to make sure that it's maybe not running into your production hours from a backup perspective. All of that can be customized, as you could expect. If you're used to the Veeam software, it's the same functionality. Now, once you have set up the backup jobs or the backup copy jobs, once you have a backup in the cloud, you can select your backups within that cloud repository and see those residing within that cloud repository itself. So in this list, you can see I have a range of backups held within the iland cloud repository, and I can simply collect and select those through the interface. The reason that this is important is it's just not a way to send the data to the iland cloud and forget about it. This is a really nice way to restore the data should you ever need to. So because this is natively built into the Veeam software, you have a very simple way to restore the data, whether that's the entire virtual machine, whether it's specific disks, VM files or guest files, or they also provide the ability to restore Active Directory, Exchange, SharePoint, SQL, Oracle, or other data specific to those applications. You can use the same Veeam viewers to view the contextual data behind applications and restore that data back to your on-premises location. So again, you can always leverage your local backups, but should those be compromised, you have all of the native restore capabilities that you're used to, and you can leverage those from the cloud. And again, when Veeam does these restores, it's just pulling the selective files back to your local location. It doesn't have to drag everything back or the entire virtual machine. It can restore specific items back to your on-premises location. And there's no waiting time needed to actually perform the restore. With certain services on the market, you have to actually request a restoration, and there's a number of hours to actually begin restoring that data before you can click the download button. With this, as soon as you can access the Veeam interface, you can actually choose to restore that data back. So you can see, very simple to connect, very simple to back up, and very simple to restore. I think they did a great job of this. I feel it's a very simple solution to integrate with what you're doing today. If you're a Veeam user, if you're not, it's very, again, simple to learn as well through both Veeam and iland. We can provide full onboarding and support on that. Finally, I also wanted to show you what's possible through the iland Cloud Console. This is giving you visibility over whether you have a single repository or whether you have multiple repositories in the cloud. You have full visibility and control over the storage quotas within the cloud environment. So you have visibility to make sure you have enough storage within the cloud to sustain your backups being moved to that repository. So in this case, you can see I have a total of 7 terabytes from iland. I'm using about 877 gigabytes, and I have 6 terabytes free. And I've split that across multiple repositories here for different projects, and we call those tenants. Imagine tenants can actually also be departments. They can be end customers. If you're, for example, working as a partner, they can be whatever you need to. And each one of these repositories is a secure, segmented repository for backup data. So we can work with you to establish what you need within each region and make sure that it's sized appropriately for your requirements. But through the Cloud Console, you always have visibility over the storage usage. So in this case, you can see a number of my repositories are awaiting usage, but I have one repository using about 88%. I can actually set an alert to make sure I'm aware of that, because actually I'm probably going to need to add some more storage. I can also keep track of when the last successful job took place to that repository. Now, going into that, I have a way to have visibility over the storage growth over time. To see, actually, in the last week, it's been pretty steady, but over the last maybe 6 months, we can see the storage growth over time. You can see, actually, it started to grow back in July. So this can be utilized to analyze trends of storage growth and for you to understand maybe when you need to add additional storage repository to the cloud. Again, as I mentioned, you can set alerts to keep track of maybe when you need to do that. I've set a threshold alert at 85%, and so I'm getting emails right now through to my email address to let me know that I have to potentially add some storage to my cloud repo. This is really handy when you have multiple storage repositories in different geographies to be able to understand when you need to track and change things here within iland's cloud service. So really useful information there. Now, what happens if you do need to add storage to a cloud repository? Maybe you've got one of those alerts at a weekend point, and it's become critical that you get additional data offsite. Well, we built in a mechanism to add storage directly through our Cloud Console, all the way up to 5 terabytes of data through to a specific existing repository. So in my case, my solution architecture storage cloud repository has got 88%. I can very simply add 3 terabytes of storage to that repository, self-service, instantly through to the iland cloud as well. So you can see we can address that storage concern very quickly. So that was a general overview of the Cloud Console and the Veeam Cloud Connect service and the iland Secure Cloud Backup. If I return through to my PowerPoint presentation and go through back. I did want to open up through to any questions that may have come in through as we've been running there, and I'm just going to have a look through the questions that we have here. One question is, can I store data in multiple sites with your service? Now, certainly, yes, you can do. We would generally see a lot of companies are trying to consolidate the number of cloud repositories that they have, but certainly you can choose to have cloud repositories in the geographies and sites that make sense. Maybe you have certain data centers within Europe. You want to make sure that that data is moved just to Amsterdam, so it retains within the European Union. That's a possibility. But you might have also additional use cases in places like Australia and the US, and certainly you can have individual repositories within each region to store that data from each Veeam server and manage those all through the iland console. So, yep, great question. Yes, you can do that. One of them is, can I utilize this for disaster recovery as a service? We would see this more as a backup solution. We think that for disaster recovery as a service, you really need a true DR as a service solution, and that's why we have launched specific services around that. So I think following on from this tech talk, let's regroup on that one and let's run through the DR as a service technologies. But we really feel you need to align the technology to the use case, and a lot of companies do backup very well, including Veeam. Also, they do DR very well with separate services, and that's where we can utilize those to align to that. One of the questions was around Nutanix Acropolis. Yes, we support that. I did think I ran through that with the slides. So definitely, if you're running that hypervisor, we can support cloud backup from that service. And another question that we have is, can I trial your service? And actually, that really leads me nicely on to one of the next steps after this tech talk has finished, and we would encourage you to look through this. So first of all, we always recommend, as you look to consume a cloud backup service or any service with a cloud provider, we assess how much storage you need to align to that service. And as we mentioned, Cloud Connect is purely based on the amount of storage that you need within the cloud. So what we would recommend is working with an iland representative to run a cloud backup assessment. You can model different types of backup retention policies, as you can see in the middle of the screen. I'm running a 7-daily, 4-weekly, and 12-monthly retention policy. And actually, based on the real-world data within your virtual center, we can actually recommend how much storage you need in the cloud. So this is one of the next steps that we would recommend, running a cloud assessment through our Catalyst tool to get an idea of how much storage you need for your production use case. But a really nice next step would also be to run one of our free trials as well. So iland offers a 30-day free trial. It's 5 terabytes within the cloud, any location of your choice. It's completely free of charge without any commitment to providers with any credit card details or anything like that. It's deployed in minutes through automation on our side, and it really does give you a really nice way to test and verify the service. If you're an existing Veeam user or considering Veeam and maybe evaluating the software, this is something you can gain access to through this URL very simply and easily, get your credentials in minutes, and actually hook up to iland and begin backing up. And actually, what we often see is customers start with our 5 terabyte model and actually continue that into production. We can actually upgrade this same repository to a live customer repository. It's using the same architecture and software behind the scenes. So if you go to iland.com/free trial, this is where you can gain access to our 5 terabyte test drive. We would also reach out to you and talk about your project to make sure that as we move through to that continuity to production, we right-size that repository. We have some really good special offers in place today to actually consume the service. So with that, I would always encourage people to visit iland.com and specifically the free trial section to get your hands on this Veeam Cloud Connect free trial. With that also, just to conclude, we have an upcoming tech talk in December, specifically onto the same topic. We're talking about iland secure cloud backup, but now also for Office 365 using Veeam software as well. So if you're interested in that, go to iland.com/tech talks webinar. We'll be holding that one in December, so watch this space. But I'd like to thank everyone for their time and hope you enjoy the free trial. Please feel free to reach out to myself or any of my colleagues for any information as you work through that trial service. Thanks for everyone's time.